The exhibition at Merston Gallery is entitled Colour and Space. I noticed that Nelly Judah once wrote about you that, to her mind, you are one of the few artists who could arrange the space and colour even on a small canvas, though it is very large work which has the immediate impact. Could you tell us about your use of colour and space?
My use of colour and space is, in the very early years, has been influenced through my view of nature, you know, of my experience of nature, you know, and especially when I travelled, I was fascinated by the far distances, you know, the kind of horizon, and what is behind the horizon, the kind of rather, how you say, the unknown.
Unknown, yes.
And of course, you know, it has to be explained that my initial work into abstraction in non-figuration happened about, it started in 1960, where before I used to be a figurative painter. And I just was, as I said, fascinated by the space you see in nature. And then, of course, also the endless sky, you know, the infinity.
Asking you about this reference to nature, one can see evidence maybe of landscape or reference or awareness of landscape, but you wouldn't call yourself a landscape painter, would you?
Well, I was a landscape painter before.
Oh.
You know, before I got into non-figuration, but I see it has also to be explained that the influence as an art student, you know, I went literally to 4 different art colleges, 2 in Germany, 1 in England. I went to the Slade, and after that I wanted to live in Paris, and I went to the École des Beaux-Arts just to be a student. And on these kind of courses, you of course get influence, first of all through other students, or through the professor who's teaching in the class, and then of course through the art history of things which you find interesting. Like in the very beginning, when I started, I was interested, which goes back into my childhood, where my father used to be in appreciation of Caspar David Friedrich, the romantic German painter, who was actually having a reproduction on our wall, so that as an interest. And then later, when I was beginning in the art colleges, the particular professor was an artist who was very influenced by Matisse. So Matisse got introduced. Then myself, there is a certain interest in exotic aspects in my life. I found Paul Gauguin very interesting because of his lifestyle. It's very kind of consequent lifestyle, and his vision, which took many years to come to maturity, and his exotic travel to the South Seas. And that really appealed to me very strongly. So I was in quite early times in my first art college times quite interested in the exotic, and especially into Asia. You know, the kind of East Asian countries like Japan and China.
And that has prompted you to travel?
And what happens then, I had a lot of still life studies to do, you know, a la Matisse. And then when I actually transferred from the first school into South Germany to go to the academy as a full-time student, I met a young exotic person, very beautiful, very delicate, who came from Indonesia, which was a sensation in Germany. It's very different in England, because here you have the world living in London or in the big cities. But in Germany, to see somebody from far away, from a different continent, was quite rare. So she was so delicate, and she was a great love of everybody in the academy. I was able to ask her to sit as a portrait, and so I painted her portraits. But the thing was, that's where Gauguin comes in, because the interest of the exotic, you know. But then, you see, through the teaching and the people, because at the academy there were people teaching who used to be pupils at the Bauhaus.
That was the question I was going to ask. You've mentioned Gauguin
in Dessau, you know, Berlin, you know, and so there were these people, and through that influence I got interested of teachers who were become great artists in the Bauhaus, like Kandinsky, Paul Klee, Johannes Itten,
hence the reference to circles, points, squares.
Yes, you know, it's something which developed into the kind of geometry.
Yeah.
And apart from that, I was interested in geometry, but in particular the sacred geometry, which is being used in religion, in many different religions. I mean, in Christianity. And I traveled in the East quite often, in Asia, India. You feel the temples are all based on the sacred geometric patterns. And, you know, I didn't really make a big kind of thing about it. It's just the interest which I followed. And most of my travels I did in the different continents in the world were looking at these kind of ancient cultures who produce them. And that also includes, for instance, my interest in Egypt, in the pyramids, and the ancient Egyptians. And then, of course, the equivalent of pyramid building in Central America. You know, to go to Mexico, to Yucatan, and see all these fantastic the temples there in pyramid form, and also near Mexico City. So this is something which I was in, not so much in the kind of being, well, having come to England in the end, to live with my young wife here. And actually originally I wanted to travel with her and live in Indonesia, her home country. But because of her illness she developed, we couldn't travel. So I got stuck in England. But it wasn't too bad, because I also got a teaching job.
I wanted to ask you about the particular colour that you use in your paintings, Peter. I know that you're also very interested in the texture as well as colour, but can you tell us about how you arrive at the colour that you use, or something about it?
Well, my reaction towards colour is very instinctive. It's something to do, well, it has a certain kind of sensuous aspect, you know, a kind of, you know, always where you want to touch something, a fantastic red or a receding blue, you know, and it is something very difficult to put into words, really. And of course, nature helps, because nature is full of color. In summer you got these, or in spring you have these saturated greens, and then when you look in the sky, you can have this fantastic blue gradation from a kind of light turquoise blue, which recedes in the gradation to the sky, into the black of the universe. You know, that kind of consciousness, you know, is there. And then, of course, you see man-made kind of colors, like when you look into the country and you see a village, you see all the red roofs in the saturated green. And that actually stimulated by using it. But of course, when you use color in a certain kind of abstract combination and compositions, you realize you go beyond what you actually experience in nature. It becomes almost like a kind of symbolic use, yeah? Which, of course, is also very difficult to talk about. You know, it also maybe even go into religious aspects. It's not really consciously designed to do that, but it is the reaction which one has instinctively when you mix your color and put it on, you know, and then you think, I don't want to use a kind of shape which actually nature provides, or man-made shapes like pottery or whatever, you know, but want to get rid of that and make it completely concrete. And that is actually the school which has been established on the continent. Well, the Bauhaus worked on that, Kandinsky worked on that, but also the Swiss school was quite strong in that. People like Max Bill, Gräser, Lohse, and what's his name, who used to teach at the Bauhaus, Itten. And when you know their work and what it is, that is something which I latched on. Of course, you get, and also for me, again, through the interest of a wider circle and that kind of non-figurative world, you come to Holland to Mondrian, you know, or you go to Russia, Malevich, and the group of artists there. You think they had all an indirect influence. But then, of course, I wanted not just to be in their kind of world entirely. I wanted to be something to do with myself, even so, if it's maybe very limited. But that's why I think I used my interest in traveling and seeing different countries and different natures, different societies. And so I got very interested in the kind of color symbolism of the Chinese, you know, which is very different to the Western world of the color symbolism. But that, in a way, is really a lecture in itself, to really go into it. And I've never felt like doing that.
No. But you mentioned religion, but your paintings are not religious.
No, they are not. They are not religious, of course not. But it did give me certain insight, you know, what a red could mean, yeah, or what a yellow could mean.
Or a circle?
Yes, well, that, you know, the form-giving elements like circle, square, triangle, oval, and the combination of them give you the kind of the grammar to compose a picture. Yeah? You know, before, it, you know, I mean, or it could be like a Jackson Pollock, where you just squish that on, you know.